Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey, everybody. We want to welcome you back to this episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. Thank you for joining us. I am Chris Bay, joined by three of our Mikes. I've got Mike Kwong down in Houston, Texas. How are you, sir?
Right. All right.
Good, good. Michael Crawford right here in Lawrence, America.
Hello.
Hello. Headed south of the border next week, though.
Yes, sir.
Little R&R. And then Mike E. Michael Everett.
Morning.
Michael King Everett.
Come on now.
Hey, we're going to take on a topic. Actually, we had a client this week email and ask, hey, can you shoot me a podcast where you guys are discussing policies on kids? And we've talked about it in tons of policies, or tons of episodes, but I don't know that we've ever just talked specifically about kid policies. Maybe the one we did a long time ago, Crawford, with when Milo got hit, but that was even an add-on, I think, to another topic.
It was. I went and scoured all of
Mm-hmm.
our podcasts and couldn't find one specific where we just did one on kid policies.
Yeah. This topic, I think it's safe to say, is near and dear to all of our hearts. And just start the timer, the over-under on when somebody's going to cry. Because for what's that?
I said, you don't know me.
You don't know me. When Nelson's number one principle is think long term, he's not talking about us. He's talking about creating a system that can change lives generationally.
That's it.
And one of my favorite IBC books is What Would the Rockefellers Do? So if this idea of legacy and building a system for kids, etc., is important to you, of interest to you, I would recommend two books. What Would the Actually, three books. What Would the Actually, a bunch of books, but I have a lot of books. What Would the Rockefellers Do is a really great book, I think, on this topic. But in that book, they reference another book that is not an IBC book, but it's about teaching our kids and about family values, and that is called Entrusted. Again, it's not an IBC book, but it is an interesting book when you think about how do we teach kids and promote the values and the things that we care about as families. And then the third book that I would reference is Mike Kwong's book, Dibs. You got it there handy, Mike Everett? Do the little commercial.
Hold on, I'm ready.
Dibs on Your Money. That will help you get into some of the meat and potatoes of how this can work for a family generation.
Well, let's stop right there because there is a great book called Family Banking with Purpose that really hones in on the family and what can really happen as life. And that's written by my business partner, Chris Bay.
Yeah. And just so people know, if you haven't heard us talk about that book, it is not a nuts and bolts book. It's a story. It's a parable. So, I could see someone putting a comment on Amazon or wherever, and saying, interesting book, but they really don't get into the details. Well, that was the point. It was to tell a story, right? If you want more details, then Dibs on Your Money is going to be a better book for you. So it just depends on your learning style and what you're into. Wouldn't hurt to read them both. Actually, you might get inspired.
That's it.
So let's talk about policies for kids. And we can be talking about our own children, or in some cases, Mike Everett, our resident grandfather. We can talk about grandkids as well. And also we want to reference in Nelson's book, he talks a lot about getting policies on kids. So all of us have stories. We even pulled out our illustrations that we have on our kids, and we can kind of share exactly what they're doing and how we've used them and all that. Mike Everett, you want to set the stage and kind of paint a picture for us and take us back to the source of Nelson Nash.
Well, there is a chapter called An Even Distribution of Age Classes. And we're going to get a little bit into the weeds, but not too far, so people will understand the value of what we're trying to portray here about kid policies. Obviously, when you're young, and I'm going to go back to when I first bought my first policies, I was 50, I was younger. You think about where we were financially. I was changing careers. I had little income, couldn't really afford the policies. And, this is what's brought us really here today, because we're trying to help people figure out how do we financially afford to start an IBC plan. And of course, we've had a ton of people come back to us and go, you got to have a lot of money. Well, you don't have to have a lot of money. It's just you've got to.
We just released that podcast.
That's right. That's right. And so the bottom line is you've got to just pick a starting place. And of course, we've also had other people talk about, and I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a rabbit trail here. I want to get all my debt taken care of. Mm-hmm. And all of those things are lies. So if you come to a webinar, the very first thing that I start with is everything that we learned about money and banking is based on lies and deception. So that is the great thing about what Nelson did in his book. He gave us talking points. He gave us concrete evidence of how, what, where, why that you could actually start the policy. So an even distribution of age classes talks about all the different time frames and all the different ways in which you truly want to do this, not just for my generation, our generation, but for the kids, the grandkids, and so on. So let's see. Number one principle, think long term. You've got to start thinking about your family and where you're going to be. Now, I'm going to use Crawford here because he's our youngest guy. He's not thinking about grandkids right now. He's still in the kid stage, getting Milo rolling. But yet, at some point in time, that is definitely going to happen. Yeah. So I want to touch on the bullet points first, because this will kind of really set the stage for how people would want to think about their IBC plan, and thinking, Chris Bay said it earlier, generationally. It's about creating a legacy. So bullet point number one is it covers multiple generations and promotes long-range planning. Ooh, think long-term. Number two, underwriting problems are minimized. And we'll touch on that in just a little bit with what I did with my grandkids. Tax-free buildup of cash values over a long period of time. Outlay is very small compared with the ultimate yield. And we'll touch on that one here in a little bit. The generation paying the premiums can most easily afford them. Who's the people that can afford them?
Mike
the old
Everett.
Folks. Yeah, that's it. The old folks. Come on now. When death benefit occurs, the system becomes self-sustaining. I have coached my wife. I'm the oldest male on my core family right now. So guess who probably the next one out is? It's me. I know it's hard to believe, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So I've coached her about what to do with the windfall of cash that's going to be coming back with death benefit. Precludes any need for Social Security. If all of a sudden you've created this giant bucket of money, do you think we're going to need to take Social Security? We won't. Passive income is assured, and we'll talk about that multiple ways through what these guys are all doing. Estate planning is greatly simplified. I'm telling you, you don't have to have a 45-page all of this and all of that. It's all done in a life insurance contract. Wealth mentality is transferred to succeeding generations over a long period of time to produce consistent understanding. They are learning a process, not buying a product. Oh,
Right.
man, that's good. And then the last one is promotes understanding of what stewardship is all about. That's really us training and teaching and coaching our kids as they are growing and maturing in how IBC works and why it works the way it does.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little background right there.
That's good stuff. I think one of the keys that plays into this in Nelson's teaching when he talks about an even distribution of age classes is the fact that he has a background in forestry.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And so that plays into this long-term thinking. And Mike Everett, can you just explain a little bit to people, like if they're like me, if they're a suburban punk and have no experience with forestry or that kind of stuff, the cuttings that they do, and then how that relates to grandparents and policies and all that, and then lead us into what you've done.
Well, you think about when somebody goes out and plants a big forest, are all of those trees going to come up? They are not. So what they've got to do is they've got to go in between them, and they've got to kind of shear out some of the ones that are, a little smaller, that aren't growing. And so there's some weeding out. And really, I mean, that's kind of what we do with how we utilize our plans. We utilize one or two of them, but yet we've still got these other ones that are still growing and compounding.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what I have done with my kids and my grandkids, so I was late coming to the party. So I was 50 and Kurt was 25 when I was 50. Let's just get it out there. So I bought a policy on him at 25 and take 6 off of that. That's when I bought Kara's first policy. And they were little tiny policies. Now, when Kurt was 25 and Kara was 19, was I thinking about grandchildren? I was not. I was just struggling enough to try to keep my kids out of trouble and try to teach them how to get along in life. So then all of a sudden, Kurt gets married and starts having kids. And of course, all of this started flood loading back into my head.
All of a sudden it became relevant, didn't it?
Well, yeah. And you think how quick it has happened. I mean, Lila's 14, Hunter's 12. And I'm going, it's happened just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, how in the world has this happened so quickly? But yet, I literally, I'm going to hold this up. This is page 73. I followed this example almost to a T and started a $2,000 policy, obviously with base and PUA. Mm-hmm. And I thought, gosh, if this works even half like this, everybody wins. Everybody wins. So obviously before we got started on this thing, I started sifting through an old policy that I did for Lila, and she's 14. So keep in mind, I've paid $28,000 in premiums, 28 grand.
Mm-hmm.
In her original illustration, she should have $26,000. So what's the real cost of this whole thing? It's almost zero. It's a little over $1,500 is really what it is. Mm-hmm. That's what this entire thing has cost. But not that this is important, but there's $444,000 worth of death benefit. Now, I go back to some of the questions I always ask in the webinar. If I had to ask you what was more important, cash or death benefit, what would we all say?
Cash.
Cash. I could care less about the death benefit, and especially for Lila. But then I go back to here, and I think the generation paying the premiums can most easily afford them. Can I afford $2,000 a year for a life insurance premium for my grandkid? Mm-hmm. You better believe it. Is she going to buy cars? Is she going to get married? Is she going to buy a house? So what we're doing is we're creating this crazy thing. But now, one of the things that I don't know how to say this. I'm going to say I stumbled and added what we call a guaranteed insurability option. And I'm going to go to the design page on here just so I can talk about it kind of semi educationally. I bought what they call a guaranteed insurability option. Different companies have different wording, guaranteed purchase option, guaranteed insurability option. But what you're doing is you're buying an option to where they can, at certain intervals of their life, add an additional life insurance policy with no proof of insurability. So if they get cancer, if they get diabetes, or you fill in the blank, they can actually purchase additional life insurance. It's going to cost them at the attained age, obviously. And I did this on my grandkids' policies, all 4 of them, by the way. And then when my granddaughter turned 9, she comes up with type 1 diabetes, insulin dependent. Whew. Didn't take long. I have guaranteed that my grandkids will be able to purchase additional life insurance along different ages of their life, even though they have type 1 diabetes. Both my granddaughter and my grandson from my son, they both have type 1 diabetes. We have no diabetes in our family, no type 1 diabetes in our family. Mm-hmm. So thinking about generationally, what has happened? We've created a nest egg that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they don't have to worry about it, number one, but they can't do anything about it. It's just going to get bigger.
And Mike, you think about it's obviously about the ability to use these policies to finance their lives and
that's
things
right.
like that. But also you think about when especially those 2 grandkids, if and when they get married, who then cannot get more life insurance, right?
That's
Had it
right.
not been for the things that you put in place. Think about what that could mean to their someday spouse and their children. Oh, you had the foresight to do that when they were, how old or how young can kids be when we turn in an application?
15 days old.
Yep. And so whenever there's a new little baby coming along, we preach this all the time to clients and to ourselves. We're like, hey, 15 days old. We need to get a policy. We need to get an application going.
Yeah. And here's the crazy thing.
Is our biggest cheerleader on that for sure.
Yeah, that's right. So here's the crazy thing. This is before we learned what we know now. I was doing 40% in the base and 60% in the PUA on my grandkids' policies. I would not do them like that now. Mm-hmm. I'd put 50% in the base and 50% in the PUA. Why? Because we don't care about the dividend right now. But 30 years from now, that thing is going to be a cash cow. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be churning out cash values of just galore. Yeah. And it's going to be buying additional life insurance because guess what we are all going to do? We are going
taxes. Oh,
we're gonna die. So I tell everybody, I said, I'm actually worth more dead than I am alive right now. And Linda, she then kicks me under the table, and but yet we've created this giant pool where we're all getting to utilize this, going on vacation, buying cars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So super fun.
Way to set the table. Mike Crawford, you have started policies on Milo. Give people a little context. Milo is now how old, what grade, and And what
Yeah.
have you guys done for Milo's future?
Yeah, so he's 9.5, fourth grade. Has no idea about money. Still likes to just spend it on whatever floats his boat, you know. But we've actually started implementing a little bit of a Chris Bay tool where we reward him for things that we find value in, and we pay him, you know, uh, uh, for doing those items, like, and
Yeah.
engaging in those things. And so, um, pretty small right now, but that's kind of where we're heading with that. But anyway, on his policies, we got his first policy when he was like almost 2.5. And you know, we didn't know really what the future held on that. You know, it was just more of having that coverage and the providing a future that when he's in his like 20s, and just like Everett said, needs cars, needs college, needs, you know, house, whatever it is, we're going to have the foundation built that he has no idea what's happening right now. But we are preparing him for that inevitability with these policies. And we ended up buying another one on him a year and a half ago, I think. And, you know, they're not big, but the idea is that there are multiple, and that because he is currently insurable, it's nice to have, we just keep stacking them up. And, you know, before you know it, he has, you know, over $500,000 worth of death benefit. Again, not important today, but it's just going to continue to grow and get better. And then add on top of that, he'll have, you know, an actual pool of cash to go to when he needs it most.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to give credit where credit's due, that paying kids for doing activities or learning things that you value and you want them to learn and participate in, that was inspired by What Would the Rockefellers Do? There was a chapter in the book that talked about that, and I was like, I love that idea, because we're giving our kids money anyway to go to Noodles and Company with their friends. So why not give them money and get a return on it, and then not give them the money for Noodles and Company? Say, hey, you've got a way to have some money in your pocket, and we get a little return on that.
Yeah, but in the great big
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things there, Mr. Bay, you have about a month where you're now going to be able to release all of your kids, and now you get to keep some of that money, possibly.
It is I think it is the principle number 2 from Nelson Nash. Yeah, capitalize your system generously, and we have been capitalizing our family system. Mike Kong, you start. How old was Jackie when you guys started her first policy?
Yeah, she was about 6, and we got like a $1,200, you know, annual premium policy, and we did front load it just like we do all our policies with the PUA. And the nice thing about kids policies too, that may not be obvious, is that there is actually more room because they're so stretched out for you to kind of sneak in those extra PUA. And just fast forward to today, 11 years now on, her policy's got about 30,000 in that. And again, the base is like 1,236.
And how old is Jackie now?
This month she's 17. Yeah.
17, and she'll be graduating from high school this spring, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's got $30,000 sitting in that policy that you have. That's just one of the policies.
That's right. That's my next point. You know, you know, kids don't have to be limited to one. You know, I mean, we of course, you know, we're a little bit extreme. She has 4, but one thing to distinguish kid policies with, you know, and is the insurability of that, right? Because we understand when we talk about insurability, you know, you typically look at the insured person's earnings, right? Present earnings times expected years of productive work. Well, kids have no earnings. So one obvious question might be, well, how much could a kid get?
Yeah.
And the general rules we know is typically it'll be about half of the parent, their coverage of whatever their parent's coverage is. In some companies, I think most companies go by the parent with the lesser coverage, but there are companies, you know, we work with them that have the other parent, so that whoever has the higher coverage, they
Mm-hmm.
get half of. And that could be a big difference, right?
Yes.
But regardless, I never want people to feel like they need to hit that right away. It's all about wherever you're comfortable to get started, right? I mean, that's it.
Well, Nelson said it best, and that's why whenever Mary and I do like these little policies for Milo, we aren't trying to like shoot the moon, to
Yeah,
use
that's
card
right.
game, language, but like we are incrementally and systematically creating this
Mm-hmm.
pool of this network of money that he'll have access to. And so we don't have to do it all in one fell swoop. And the bonus is that as we get older, we are probably becoming more financially stable as well, which means we can probably buy more
That's exactly
sizable
right.
policies, at that time. So it's
Mhm.
it's a matter of, get the coverage, add the, guaranteed insurability option, which we do on all kid policies now.
Mm-hmm.
And, plan for that future growth, because Nelson talked about it's a system of policies. It's not usually just ever one.
That's right.
We want a system of policies, because just like a McDonald's or any other larger franchise, they didn't just have one in that town. They have multiple, because they're creating cash from multiple sources. And that's really what these policies are, is creating cash in multiple buckets.
Yep.
I'm going to take us back early in Mike Everett's IBC career. And when we started our system of policies, we started 4 policies, one on each of our family members. And we didn't have money. We did not have money. So I think for most of us, when we talk about those first policies on kids or grandkids, we're
Yeah.
talking $1,000 to $2,000 a year.
Mhm.
Max.
There are some folks who will do larger policies on kids, and more power to you. That's just not where we were. We weren't able to do that at the time. And so I pulled up actually the illustration, old paper illustration that Mike Everett gave us. And this was back in the fall of 2011. And this one is on my oldest daughter, Lily Bay. Lily at the time was 13 years old. So I wish we would have started this sooner, but she was 13. So you start when you can. She's now 20, just turned 26, December 1st. Just had to get her own health insurance and all that good stuff, right? So $1,000, and keep in mind that PUA has dropped off.
Mhm.
We've dropped that PUA off. So we just kept putting $1,000 in each year. And if I go down to her age 26 now, there's over $14,000 sitting in there after 13 years of capitalizing $1,000, and we dropped the PUA, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's over almost $15,000 of cash value available.
Yeah.
And what we have done with Lily is, because we implemented what Mike Crawford was talking about earlier, we incentivized her to attend boot camps. She helped me study flashcards when I was prepping for my Nelson Nash Institute test. I had a method to my madness, right? I want her learning alongside me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she understands IBC to a point. She understands how it works. And she has marinated in this concept rather than learning all the other stuff that's out there. So to her, it feels very natural.
Yeah.
So when she got to, I think it was about age 23, maybe 20, probably around age 23, we actually signed over ownership of that policy to Lily. And Shelly Forbes on our team is Lily's coach. And Lily has used it to travel, to make purchases. She's used it for a variety of things, but it's hers and she controls it. I don't even actually have access to that policy because I'm not licensed with that company. So I don't know what's going on with her policy. It is fully hers.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Now, I will say, I want to bring up what another thing that we did. We did the same thing for Phoenix, as we had a policy at the same time. But as Mike Kwong said, this is not just one policy. We've got systems of policies. One of the things that we did that I would recommend for everyone to do is, you cannot get a term policy on a child until they are within 6 months of turning 18. So once they are 17 and a half, you can then look at getting term policies. And what we did at that point is we got convertible terms on both of the kids. We actually even did a convertible term on Sean, to your point, Mike Kwong, because we wanted to increase her death benefit so we could increase the kids' death benefit.
Yes.
And so we didn't have the money to do it with IBC whole life policy. So we did that mechanism with convertible terms. And so we got convertible terms on both of the kids. And turns out one of our kiddos is now uninsurable. We got, I think it was $400,000 of coverage in a convertible term. And we have since then converted that $400,000 of death benefit into IBC whole life insurance. So a couple of points that I would just highlight. If you're taking notes, I would say when your child is 15 days old, get an application started. Add the guaranteed insurability option to the kid. I think with one of the companies, we can bump it up to 50,000. We can add every 3-year interval. I would recommend you look at a system of policies for them. So just start with something small, but just get started, get that coverage. I would recommend when they reach 17 and a half, get a bunch of convertible term on those kids, because you never know what could happen with their health in the future. Other points that you guys wanted to bring out or highlight on policies related to kids? If you're a grandparent, buy up policies on your grandkids.
All of them.
It will be an amazing gift.
Get them on the neighbor's kids too.
You can't do that.
I know, that was just a joke. Oh gosh, I was just kidding for those listening.
The other thing I would say is, if a child, and many of us have kiddos or grandkids that are uninsurable, that child, since they can't get insurance on themselves, it doesn't keep them from getting policies on other people. They can still do IBC with policies that insure other lives. So that's a possibility for them to do as well. So anyway, those are some points when thinking about policies for kids. We want to thank you all for joining us. To the 3 mics, thank you, gentlemen, for your experience, your wisdom. Even as Mike Everett said, we have stumbled into some things over the years. My policies did not have guaranteed insurability options. We didn't know about that at the time. So we just continue to learn and add to what we're doing right alongside all of our listeners. Thanks again for joining us. Check us out at the lifesuccesslegacy.com website, lifesuccesslegacy.com. Tons of resources there, lots of other podcasts with lots of information, books, papers. Sign up for a webinar and get an introduction to IBC. Read Nelson's book, read any of the other books, and join us for a boot camp if you want to take a deep dive into how IBC works. Thanks again for joining us, everybody.